And we'll go ahead and get started. So my name's Ariel. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of Bloodletter. And we have our wonderful team member, Viva Whitman, who's also here with us today. And we have four incredible poets whose work is featured in issue 3, Hysteria. And this issue has been such a labor of love for the Bloodletter team. And we got a lot of submissions, and these poets just really blew us away. And this is our first happy hour. So, oh, and also I want to say Kat is here all the way from Japan, who is one of our fiction authors whose work is going to be featured in our in-person performance tomorrow night. So if you're located in LA, I hope you'll join us for that as well. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our first poet who's going to do a reading, and then we'll maybe do a couple questions. And we've got 4 poetry readings today. So our first reader is Terrance Hudson, and I'm going to just do a little bio for you, Terry. Terry wrote Scrap Papers of a Negro Alchemist, which is spectacular, and I highly encourage you to visit our website and read Terry's piece as well. But we're so excited to have it brought to life by Terry. Terrance Hudson is ultimately indescribable in any tongue, spoken or written, but they promise to try here. They're an emerging poet, established occultist, occasional editor, and June Gemini living in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Inspired by a long lineage of radical Black writers, their work deals in recurring themes: Blackness, queerness, chronic illness, and the social power of memory work and the archive. So, Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I just go ahead and start then.
Fantastic. And I'm going to also pin you so that everybody can watch you work.
Negredo. Lying perfectly still in a child-sized bunk bed, I haunt my own home. They whisper rumors and diagnoses, and all the while, amongst detritus I swell, fungal, with an assorted chrysalis of grimy sheets and stale dejection, fermates a new form of radioactive unlife. Citrinitis. In class, I once read that Black men die more catastrophically across class than anybody else in America. I don't remember where I once read that Black trans women are victims of homicide more frequently than any other group of fags in America. It's not a contest, and if it is, the prom is drenched in pig's blood and all involved in burning forever. At the perfect intersection of identity, I am heir to a plastic crown-studded ideal victim, my funerary neons, and a glass coffin. I keep it quiet while I choke, don't want to make a scene, and relitigate my traumas through teeth Bojangles white. For the love of God, just lynch me. Rubedo. In second-hand finery, amid opium haze, I worship at the altar of Hermaphrodite Trismegistus, thrice greatest, three-dicked, coming upon me and smothering my oracular sight with all the virile fertility of a godhead. He looks like all the queer Black poets who died and found new life, republished, repackaged after the worms have devoured their relevance, which is to say, he looks like all queer Black poets.
Thank you so much, Terry. That was beautiful. Um, Terry, I would love to ask you a little bit about your process working on this piece, and maybe a little bit about your process in general, if you're okay to share.
Yeah. So I took this from a bunch of scraps that I've just written over the years and stuck in a drawer, and sort of reworked them after taking a class with Tyree Day and getting really into poetry in a serious way. And I just sort of organized them based on the alchemical process of the magnum opus. Negredo, the blackening process, the decomposition at the beginning, citrinitis, the yellowing, the awakening of the solar light in one's soul, and rubedo, the reddening, the integration of all the knowledge into oneself.
Fantastic.
it was a very fun, like, internal journey to go on, as well as like a craftsmanship thing.
Absolutely. It was really exciting to see you. During this process, we kind of worked on ways to bring it to life digitally. And it was so exciting to see the way that you brought the visual content of the piece into the sort of graphic components of the poem. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. So if anybody would like to look at the text on the page, feel free to do that as well. I highly recommend it. It's a very dynamic piece to read as well. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they want to pose for Terry?
Um, I would love to gain some insight on the symbols accompanying each section.
So they're the alchemical symbols for each planet in the solar system in order, I think. Don't quote me on that. And it was actually something that came along in a revision as we discussed like the best way to break up these poems and how to sort them on the page, really make them work on like the internet space.
Yeah, the poetry on the internet is kind of an interesting challenge for us. The internet hates poetry, so we always have an exciting process when we work with our poets to try to bring it to life digitally in a scroll format. Because for those of you who don't know, I didn't know this before starting Bloodletter, but because of screen sizes, it's very difficult to maintain line breaks and formatting and things like that. So we actually take pictures of each section of our poems and collage them together so that we maintain our poet's intent with formatting. So with Terry, we had a really fun process of trying to kind of think through how that might operate in this piece. Any other questions? Okay, fantastic. Well, Terry, thank you so much. That was a beautiful reading. It's so wonderful to hear these poems read aloud. It really gives them a different energy. So next we have LeeAnn Olivier. Hi, LeeAnn. All right. Let's see. LeeAnn, where am I seeing you? Where did you go? I thought I saw LeeAnn, but now I can't seem. Viva, do you see LeeAnn? Am I going crazy?
I don't. Maybe
Okay.
there's a technical issue.
Yeah, I think so. After many years of Zoom, we still have that. Okay, no worries. Let's see. t.n.s, would you mind going next?
Of course.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Just so we can give LeeAnn hopefully a chance to hop back on. So t.n.s, I'm gonna do a little bit of an intro for you as well, but I need your help with something first. Is it ecdysis? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Thanks.
That's been a question stuck in my mind for a little bit. Okay, so we have t.n.s who is reading the poem Tarantula Ecdysis. t.n.s is a queer New York-based poet. Within their poetry, t.n.s gathers horror trinkets to prod, dissect, and devour tortured humanity, reflecting on the body, queerness, and religious trauma. Their work may be found on their social media or in online and print journals like Ghost City Press and West Trade Review. You may find them when not writing or teaching poetry, reading up on exorcism rites, and protesting at their local human rights action. So t.n.s, whenever you're ready, we're so excited to hear this piece.
Thank you so much, Ariel, and thank you all for being here. And I look forward to hearing more. And thank you for our first reader. It was amazing to listen. So this is Tarantula Ecdysis. In bed with father, I think of the crickets outside and if their noise may cover what happens when I sleep inside him, tarantula. In bed with father, I think of the crickets outside, and if their noise may cover what happens when I sleep inside the messy chest grip of his arm like sisal twine, and his breath scratching my forehead, he kisses me, tarantula. In bed with father, I think of the crickets outside, and if their noise may cover what happens when I sleep inside his messy chest arm like sisal twine, and his breath scratching my forehead, he kisses me in the aurora glow of the television rerunning car and diet infomercials. Those are two things he likes most, mechanics and controlling what I swallow. The other night, I overheard mother say that his mother had to stop selling the cocaine she kept in her tea biscuit tin, tarantula. In bed with father, I think of the crickets outside, and if their noise may cover what happens when I sleep inside his messy chest and his breath and the glow of diets. And I heard mother say that he should wipe his nose before kissing me, and there is red dye on his hands from his mother's hair, and there is spit everywhere, tarantula. In bed with father, I think of going outside and being a titov of crickets with a noise just so that my thorax shakes off the spit easily and I am finally without, tarantula. In bed with father, combing and curling my hair with his eyes closed and the weight of him pressing and the weight of the aurora glow and the clicking noise outside as I stare at the wall and think of how I am his daughter and if the exoskeleton of it can fall away, tarantula.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask you the same question, if you don't mind. I'd love to know about your process of coming to this piece and also your process more broadly of how you come to your poetry and your creative journey.
Yeah. Okay. So for this poem in particular, it was like the topics were something that I wanted to talk about, and I just wasn't sure how to go about writing it because it felt like I could never get it right and it just never felt right. And I'm like also like super into like doing a lot of like research before and like during my writing process in general. And for some reason, I was kind of like fixated on this idea of insects molting, which is that process of it removing skin because it gets too big. And it kind of felt like, yeah, this is something like the topic feels too big and I like don't know exactly how to go about doing it. So I created this like form for myself where anytime I would get close to something, I would say like tarantula and have to start over. So it's kind of like the form itself is molting into something new. And that's why like a lot of like repetition because it just seems like, the speaker can't get to exactly what they want to talk about. Yeah. And just overall, I think I'm influenced a lot by like all these different horror elements, and I really enjoy like consuming a lot of like media, which I think is like a really big part of my like writing journey, like books and different poets and like films and all of that. So yeah, I'm definitely like motivated by like all of you as like artists and just like in general, like what we see, in the world.
What's an example of a film, I'm curious, that's influenced your poetry?
Let's see. I don't know if anyone's ever seen The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. But it's like a super like strange film. And just like a lot of times when I see like really like silent films or just like films that make me feel uneasy, I oftentimes feel like I'm like watching something underwater and like everything kind of feels like I'm like removed from the scene, but also like immersed in it. So a film like that kind of influences me to try to apply it in my own poetry. But yeah, films like that definitely have influenced me. Yeah.
Yeah, highly visual films, and your work is so highly visual as well. That makes a lot of sense to me. Does anybody have any questions for t.n.s?
I was wondering, did you say that you attend exorcism rites, or did I mishear that?
No, I don't attend them. I just I'm like very fascinated by the kind of like rules that go into performing exorcisms, and there's like a very extensive document on like different elements of an exorcism. So like those exorcism rites, I'm kind of constantly, you know, looking in, and like I also take a little bit of like my poetry deals with religion and how to kind of manipulate that into a way that makes sense for me as a person. And there are a lot of fascinating things in reading up on those things.
I
So
love
not attending,
the
but just reading.
repetition of your poem and those stop signs of tarantula throughout. Yeah, I felt like it really worked.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something, having read multiple pieces from you, it seems like the composition and formalism of your work is really important, like the way that it looks on the page. Is that something you think a lot about?
Yeah, and a lot of times I feel like with this poem in particular, I had a like a vision once I got hold of that idea of molting. But a lot of other times when I'm writing poetry, it seems like it's more of like an instinctual thing of how it should look on the page. And I do like I love like a lot of different like art and like art in a way like of like sculpting, like how do you sculpt a page to like create movement. And yeah, definitely feel like the way that a poem lays on a page has so much meaning. And I try to think of that when I'm writing.
Absolutely. I'm going to put t.n.s's piece in the chat as well, so that if you haven't had a chance to look at it visually, I really encourage you to, because it really does add to the understanding of the work. Any other comments or questions? Okay, amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
t.n.s.
much.
LeeAnn, I'm so glad you're back. Are you ready to share?
Yes, thank you. My spectrum went out.
Oh, of course, always.
Yes, and my husband I didn't know I could do like a hotspot with my phone. He figured that out and did that for me. So I apologize for cutting out and having to come back.
No problem at all. It always happens at times like these, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, and then we're very excited to hear your piece. So LeeAnn Olivier, am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, fantastic. Is going to read Mute for us today. Raised in Louisiana on new wave music, horror films, and grim fairy tales, LeeAnn Olivier is a neo-Southern Gothic poet. She is the author of 2 chapbooks, Doom Loop Wonderland, out from the Hunger Press, and Spindle My Spindle from Hermeneutic Chaos Press. Her writing has appeared in many journals, including the Missouri Review, Novus, and Exposed Bricklit. She is a survivor of domestic violence, breast cancer, and an emergency liver transplant. She teaches writing at a community college in Fort Worth, Texas, where she hopes to help her students navigate their own traumas through creative expression, which is such a beautiful description of why we love this piece so much. So I'm excited for you to take it away and share Mute with us.
Okay, thank you. In the bedlam of the liver ward, the poisons seep upstream. My neighbor, snake mean, curses in Spanish, pendejo, when they ask for her name. My own throat ghosted into a phantom, an owl song, a burial at sea. Bare-backed blizzards flutter behind my eyelids, a giantess glued together inside my boiled gut, bred of hushed whispers. The woodcutter unsnarls my copper veins, botanical as cattails, while slats strap me to the bed and shadow puppets sprawl into supernovas on the walls. My mind a tinderbox of unsent letters. I'm a splendid shut-in. Beneath my tongue, white egrets walk a tightrope, and I grapple like an animal for language.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was so gorgeous to hear aloud. I've stared at that poem a lot, and it really it's such a commanding piece, and read aloud it really has a lot of gravity to it. So I know in your bio you touch a little bit on what inspires you and your background, but I would love to hear the same thing I've been asking, which is what inspired you to write the piece and a little bit about how you work.
Okay, well, I collect words like I'm sure a lot of you all do. I collect words almost like a magpie. I actually have a bowl of words right here. So I'll put them on, I cut up note cards to make them really small. And when I hear a word I like or see a word I like, I'll start collecting them. And then at some point, I just sort of shake them out onto the floor or onto a tabletop and then start playing with them. And this is kind of silly, but I have a cat. He's down here. I won't make him get on camera, but sometimes he actually will help in the process if he'll like put his paw on a word and I think, oh, I need to use that one. So I sort of try to put them together like a jigsaw puzzle. And then that's not the complete poem, you know, but then that will often lead to a line. And then if I've got a line, then I can kind of go from there. So I know I did that with this piece. I did that a lot, not to belabor it, but my transplant was 1.5 years ago, and I did lose language because I had what's called hepatic encephalopathy, so I couldn't speak or write for a while, and I sort of felt like I had no identity without those tools, you know, because that's my whole life. And learning how to write again, it helped me a lot to have this process of like just collecting words and piecing them together. And that's kind of how this poem was born. And the fairy tale imagery is just always in my head. And there are a lot of fairy tale tropes also about characters who lose language or like transmorph into an animal and are no longer able to speak. So that was kind of on my mind too when I was piecing this poem together.
Wow, that's such a fascinating way of reading the piece. I think also this information speaks a lot to fragmentation and the way that like these fragments of language or fragments of speech and the way that these fragments can come together in unexpected compositions. And I know that like in visual art, a similar process can be used, like collages made by dropping pieces of paper onto a canvas. Or I love that you kind of respond to these chance encounters or chance compositions and then kind of reshape them. That kind of aliveness and in the moment quality is so available in your work. Anybody else want to comment or have a question?
I just feel like you put that so well, Ariel, and I am totally enchanted by this process, LeeAnn. It also reminds me of fridge magnets where you put together a sentence. And I remember reading your work when it first came in and just being so delighted by it from the second I started reading. And one of the things that has always stood out to me about your work is how surprising the vocabulary is. It's just like every line I found myself pretty astonished by what came next, but it all fit together into one cohesive poem. So it's really fascinating to hear your process.
Thank you.
I wonder, does teaching influence your work as well?
Yes, definitely. Just I like to create with my students and kind of work with them and discover things with them and see like, you know, what they get out of exercises. And I'll be like, okay, I wrote something. This is how I did it. I want to see if you can do it the same way. Let's see if was this just a fluke or is this something that we can use as writers, as a tool. So yeah, they inspire me a lot.
That's fantastic. And I'm curious, after regaining speech and your ability to write, did you find that your work changed?
No, but I had more of I don't think it changed, but I think I had more of a drive to do it because, you know, I I am sort of in midlife, in the middle of my life, and I have not yet published a full-length manuscript. And it kind of put a fire into me, like, what am I doing? I need to pay attention to this. This is important. So it made me do these exercises, even if I didn't feel like I was in the mood to write or I didn't have anything to say, that then I would at least have a bowl of words. So I had no excuse not to just put something on the page.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna put LeeAnn's piece in the chat as well. Each word is so specific and careful, and I think reading it on the page is such a wonderful experience as well. And thank you so much for sharing it with us. Kendra, I would love to introduce you if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, fantastic. So Kendra Boyd is going to present after Gregory Kyle Thomas. Kendra Boyd earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with an emphasis in poetry and fiction in the Writers' Workshop program at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. She served on 13th Floor magazine in spring 2024 as editor-in-chief, overseeing 4 genre teams, and on the Linden Review in spring 2023 as senior editor, leading a group of assistant editors. She completed her senior thesis, Nympholydia. Did I say that right?
Nymphalidae?
Okay, totally wrong. Great. Nymphalidae, thank you.
I get it wrong most of the time anyway.
Very gracious of you. Directed by Dr. Lisa Faye Cootley in spring 2024. Her poetry can be found in Waymark Literary Magazine, New Note Poetry, and 13th Floor Magazine. She has poetry forthcoming in Clock House and Meeting House Magazine. So Kendra, whenever you're ready, we're so excited to hear your piece.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. And I'll just get to it. After Gregory Kyle Thomas. 1. You better stay away from Copperhead Road. If a young lass hadn't brought her own cowboy to Dirty Dogs on a Friday night, her pickings, older men wanting the feel of a young body in their hands, nothing. Mostly a wooden dance floor, boot scuffs and spilt whiskey from 4.5 minutes, jumping and yelling Copperhead Road, barely a line dance. Couple pool tables on the side was where I went alone. Young one in tennis shoes and loose sandy hair told me his name was Kyle. Courted round the dance floor, drunk feet stumbled over each other, pulling his body along like a slinky, always leaning, hands held confidently, knew where he wanted to take me. We crashed into someone else, swirled and two-stepped back to the room down the street, continued his grip when I squirmed underneath. Breath sweated my skin. When we were both too tired to keep dancing, I slept in arms wrapped tighter as night went on, preventing my usual tornado, turning and tossing. Kisses woke me, released me, promises of a call he wrote under his number, Gregory Kyle Thomas. I lost my sock. 2. I want to go home. My closet where I hide if playing a game, retreating pitch black among spiders, forgotten tubs, graduation cards, black hole I stare every night, drunken sleep suffocates me, awake despite the deepness of my monster making tunnel, clothes swirl round my bed, clean mixing sully. My bed has been my home, moving, rooms, states. 3. Drink up, sweet decadence. I can't say no to you. Kyle called, butterflied into my stomach. I answered, come here. Looked to friends, tried to explain. His voice covers his ears. I can do nothing but hang up. Call after 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 better come to me. When drunk, didn't know sober. A touch too rough, asked to leave. I can't walk around naked, not my problem. Will not leave, my problem. melts his touch on my skin. No, he does not know, no, my problem. 4. Spiders in my mind, you may take my eyes. His unflexed belly pressed my starving stomach, for a moment filling it. White skin made him feel powerful, though mine is easily ghostly when he choked me. Let him be the suppressor he was taught to be. Gnaw on my bones turned bark, a survival response nymphs used to escape men's violent, hungry hands. Mother Gaia chided, never trust a man with 3 first names. Holding still, my feet underneath his weight. Stiffening skin, chilling fingers held on my neck, unresponsive to prods and pokes. I can be anywhere. I choose to be where I was. In the room, in my home, in the closet, where it happened, waiting, century to pass. Haunt new college fools who live too close to the bars. Steal their socks.
Thank you so much. Wow. The rhythm of the piece is so alive when you read it aloud. That was really exciting. I would love to hear about your process and how you came to this piece.
Absolutely. So this came from a prompt from when I was in class, one of my earlier poetry classes. And I had a couple different teachers by that time. One that said, poem, like when you're learning how to write poetry, you should stick to 1 page, because if you can't write 1 page, why go to the second one? And then I had another teacher saying, take up all of the space that you can. And so this was one of those where I was encouraged to take up as much of the space on the page that I could. And I think I just went a little crazy when it came to spacing and writing. And it started with remembering Copperhead Road, that in my opinion, a very annoying song. From my time when I lived in Manhattan, Kansas. And it kind of just was written from there. And that's how the song section titles were introduced. And this was a hard piece for me to write. It kind of swirled together 2 different experiences that I had in this college town. And I think the sectioning it kind of made it easier for me to like digest each piece. And in the second part, kind of being able to pull back inside from everything that's going on around. And then once I was happy with that part, I could go back and branch out back into the experiences that were happening to the speaker. But yeah.
That sense of like intimacy and the small college town, that really comes through in the piece. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? I would love to hear about your relationship to the music as well. That was a question that I had that I was really excited to chat with you about.
Yeah. So the first one is kind of setting the scene of a really a gross like country bar in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And it kind of springs up from there. It's a very pushy song. Like it kind of just, there's no slowing down, and you either jump and go with everybody else, or you get off the dance floor. And then the second, I Want to Go Home, that's from SpongeBob, and which feels very nostalgic to me. I just remember like every time I'm at work or every time that I'm out and I just don't want to be out, I sing to myself, I want to go home. And that's it. At that point in the poem, I'm like, this feels like right. Is like it's that feeling of homesickness, even though you're kind of in your own space and in your own home, like being homesick in that space. And then the second two sections, those were added after the poem. And I was kind of just trying to think of different nostalgic songs to me that kind of speak to the tone and the vibe that I wanted to go with the poetry. And so Drink Up Sweet Decadence, I Can't Say No to You, by Evanescence is very much nostalgic for a young girl. And it, to me, this particular song speaks to this particular part because there's this fire and this desire, but there's also this like toxicity of wanting to be good enough and not saying no and not saying and not going against and wanting this even though when it's not really good for the for you. And then the last one, Spiders in My Mind, You May Take My Eyes, is from Cage the Elephant, which is one of my favorite bands. And this is another kind of, it has a different tone, the song does. And so I was thinking of the acoustic version specifically, and it's kind of this like indie kind of like not really perfect song. It's not perfectly sung. And it's feels like an acceptance. The song feels like an acceptance of what's happening, of like the lyric continues, but baby, I'm not blind, of this kind of rebellious, but I cut it off before there because in the poem, the speaker is kind of cut off before they're able to do anything about their situation.
Fantastic. No, that's really exciting. That gives it a lot of context and fills in some questions that I had. I'm gonna go ahead and put the poem in the chat, and then maybe I'll go in reverse order, but I would love to hear what everyone is working on next and where we can find your next pieces and what you're thinking about these days creatively. So Kendra, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so having just graduated from college, I'm kind of in this limbo space of trying to find my voice without much other influences on my editing process, because that was pretty heavy during college, which I loved and definitely got some good work. But it's kind of scary of just writing without having anybody else kind of tell me like, oh, you should do this, oh, you should do that. My piece from Clock House has come out, and my piece in Meeting House magazine should be coming out here in a month or so. I also have a piece with Midway magazine. But right now I'm working on a tarot collection of poems that go with tarot cards and kind of my own experience with that kind of influence. And then pairing with original art pieces for each card. And I'm toying with changing the medium for each art piece and having like my friends that I met in college and myself try our hands at making some art.
That's awesome. You should submit to the Nottingham Horror Collective, which is a horror zine organized around tarot cards. So highly recommend them as well.
Cool, thank you.
Of course. LeeAnn, can you tell us a little bit about where we can find your next work?
Yes, sure. I've got a piece that just came out in a journal called Oyster River Pages. And it's called Bright Star. It's similar to this. It's the same sort of time in my life, in and out of consciousness and dream, and sort of a crossover between the waking world and the dream world. And then I have a piece coming out in a journal called Sand Hills that should be out this fall sometime. And I'm working on putting all the pieces together in a collection that I have submitted. I don't know if it's really finished, but I've been submitting to kind of go along with as I see deadlines coming up, you know, because I've got about 50 pages. So, and I just yesterday it was a finalist for the Hudson Prize with Black Lawrence Press, but yesterday I found out I did not win. They're only publishing the winning one, but I am working on trying to get a fully out there. Whether it's finished or not, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm hoping that it will be soon if it's not already.
Fantastic. I'm excited to read the new pieces.
Thank you.
T.n.s, what about you?
Yeah, I recently just had a few pieces come out in a magazine called God's Cruel Joke. It has some like similar, those poems have similar like topics that I usually go towards, like using different like art pieces and like religious iconography in my work. So I'm excited about that. And I'm currently working on editing a little bit of a longer piece that I am writing about the real story behind the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. So I'm writing a piece about Annalise Mikel. So it's definitely a long one. So I'm working on that.
That's exciting. Oh yeah, I remember watching that movie in the theater. It really, yeah, it fucked me up when I saw it. I think I was like 11 or something. That's amazing. I'm excited to read that one. Terry, if you're still around, there you are. Yes, hi.
Where can you find me next? Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, let us know because we are your biggest fans and we wanna hear. So if you have any submissions that get pulled, they would be silly not to take you. So we wanna keep up to date about your work. Does anybody have any last questions for any of our brilliant poets?
I have a question for Kendra. Um, so you have such a clear speaker in your poem, but you also have such clear dialogue that was very easy for me to follow. And I noticed you used bold, but that wasn't it. You know, there was so much technique there that was really just really easy to grasp as a reader, but kind of invisible at the same time. And I wondered if you could talk about your process there.
Yeah. Part of it was bold, but part of it I just kind of, you know how you repeat conversations in your head and they keep like, and all of the fluff and all of the so and so said, or they look like this, all of that kind of comes away, and it's just the words, and there's still so much power in those words. I think my goal was to try and kind of show that on the page with the spacing, with the breaks, with the kind of chaos of it all, and it kind of is like this almost back and forth, this wish-washy. And yeah, I think when I would read it aloud and when I would read it in my head, it just felt right to how those conversations would be distilled in my head. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and in a way that only a poet could answer that question.
It's intuition. I don't know what I do.
I hear that.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay, well, like I said, we have another event tomorrow. If you're in LA, we would love to see you. Kat, we're really excited to perform your piece. And it's also available to stream on Instagram Live, and we will be recording it and putting it on YouTube. So if you are unable to be there, you can still watch it. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our wonderful poets. This was such a pleasure to be able to hear your pieces aloud for me and Viva and all of the other members of our team. We've read them so many times, and it's such a gift to have them come to life in a new way through your voices. So I'm really grateful for you to be here and to have the privilege to publish them. So thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.